All right, thank you. We will go ahead and call the meeting to order, and we'll begin with item one, our welcome from Dr. Glass.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I hope that you're getting through this December well and doing your best to stay warm and dry and are looking forward to some time off. I know that this time of year is stressful for educators and for families, and but it's also a time when you start getting some more frequent breaks in the school year and time to kind of reset, recharge. So I hope you're looking forward to that and have some plans made to take care of yourselves and your families and put yourself first for a period of time. I'll just provide you a couple of notes or updates from the Kentucky Department of Education. One is that last week we convened our United We Learn Council. That was a group of about 70 Kentuckians that were intentionally chosen to have a diverse perspective of or diverse set of perspectives and roles in the state. They were also intentionally chosen to be geographically and demographically very diverse to look like Kentucky. And their role is really to advise the state agency and me on what steps we need to take to meet the ideas and vision that was put forth in United We Learn, the report that we issued last November. That was based on a listening tour, hearing Kentuckians and their aspirations for our schools and for their children. The three big ideas in United We Learn, I'll just recap those quickly. They are first to change and improve and make vibrant, deep, and meaningful the experiences that our students have in the course of learning in order to better prepare our kids for the fast-moving, interconnected world that's already here, that's just going to be faster by the time that they're adults. So how can we change the experiences that our kids have? Second, to bring innovation to Kentucky schools with a particular focus around assessment and accountability. And there was a real sense that our systems of assessment didn't capture well the full range of experiences that people wanted for their kids, and that was a limiter to the kinds of deep learning that Kentuckians wanted to see come about. And also innovation around accountability. And there was a sense that the values of many of our communities in Kentucky aren't reflected in the accountability system that we have in the state. It's sort of federally driven and state driven, but the perspectives and values of local communities are not well taken into account. And then the final part of or priority or big idea in United We Learn was around co-creation and collaboration. Kentuckians really appreciated us listening to them when we asked about what their priorities were for the future of our schools and what we should be working on. So they said, keep doing that, keep working with us. So in some ways, the United We Learn Council that we convened last week is our effort from KDE to meet that last priority head on. We want to make sure that we are hearing from Kentuckians and we're involving them in the decisions that we make and having them give us advice and direction on how things are going. It also serves as an important sort of sensory system for us, where we've got these connections throughout the state, all sorts of different perspectives from parents and teachers, lots of students, business leaders, administrators, all views on the education system represented. And we're able to get feedback on how things are going and what's really happening so that our decisions at KDE, my decisions as commissioner, can be better informed by what's happening in the state. So exciting news on that front. We tried to push out some stories about that. If you haven't seen them, check out some of our social media feeds. Go to the Facebook one is where I go, and check out the stories on there. I also published an article in Kentucky Teacher last week that was around the question of what is deeper learning. because that comes up a lot when folks are talking about United We Learn. Well, what does that mean? Well, I think a lot of us have had experiences that were deeper learning, deep and meaningful learning experiences, but sometimes those experiences didn't happen in school. They happened outside of school, or when we were adults, or sometimes when we were learning something on our own. But we can say we've had deeper learning experiences. We've had lots of learning experiences that were not deep. And so what's the difference, I think, is the question that I was seeking to get at. From KDE, we haven't sought to define or spell out exactly what deeper learning means, because we think there's some value in having Kentuckians struggle with that themselves and talk about it and start to decide what is deeper learning and what isn't. And that's the space that I think we're in right now, working on what that is, what are some elements of those experiences, and then how can we make the learning experiences that our students have in schools better aligned with what our own experiences have been that were deep and meaningful learning. Other update that I have for you is just looking ahead to the legislative session. So the legislators will gavel back in January. It's a shorter session. These were initially designed as sort of cleanup sessions to correct any legislative oversight issues or mistakes that may have been in other laws. They have turned into nearly full-blown legislative sessions. So that's what we're expecting and gearing up for. One difference is that because Kentucky's on a biennial budget cycle, so we open the budget every 2 years, we're not expecting significant changes to the budget that was established last year. So there were increases to education funding in SEEK and in construction and in career technical education and in transportation, some areas such as those that have provided some benefits. I know that it's not enough. We've got also really aggressive inflation that we're contending with. So we need to think about, can we also increase the SEEK formula, at least at the rate of inflation, so that our inequities between property value high and property value low districts don't start creeping in, and we return ourselves to that era of really inequitable funding systems in the state that led to the Rose case and the CARA reforms. So if the state's not keeping up with its side of the equation, those inequities are coming back. They have come back over the past few years just because the state has not kept up with inflation. But we've got to really think about how we can have the state keep up with its side to keep those inequities from returning. I don't expect them to open the budget this year significantly. They always say they're not opening the budget, and they always open the budget. So I think that it's really going to depend on what the priorities of the legislature are and what they're going to open up and change some spending on. But they start out from a position of being really resistant to opening the budget, I think, for obvious reasons. They want to lower expectations around what they're going to spend money on. But I expect there will be a few things. It just really, again, is going to depend on prioritization. Some other bills, we don't have the benefit of pre-filed bills any longer. The legislature stopped that practice. So they used to do pre-filed bills, and so you could see ahead of time what they were thinking and what bills they were working on. They don't do that any longer. So we'll all be sort of surprised to see what gets introduced on the beginning of session. There'll be a little post-holiday gifts they will bestow upon us. I'm hearing a few things, and some of them relate to teaching profession supports. There's a lot of concern around teacher attrition, teacher retention, what we can do on that. If they don't open the budget bill significantly, I don't think they're going to be able to do anything significant about the compensation part of that equation, which is significant. When we think about the initial pay rates, the ongoing pay and benefit rates, and the retirement system, that's part of the equation on how we recruit and retain teachers. So I'm not expecting them to get into that, because those are big dollars when you start talking about changing the compensation system for teachers. But I think in the long run, we've certainly advocated and will continue to advocate that that's part of the equation. If you're not taking into account that major element of a labor market, which is what you pay people, you're not really making a difference in impacting recruiting and retaining staff. But I do expect there'll be some attention focused on how can some of the regulatory burden or perhaps trainings be reevaluated, some of the stressors that are put on teachers in other ways, what could be streamlined or reduced, how can we provide other supports to teachers, how can we look at recruiting efforts more broadly, and perhaps are there different avenues to licensure, even streamlining and making the licensure process easier. I sort of have mixed feelings about those last couple of solutions. I do think that alternative pathways are important and can be valuable, but really in the grand scheme of things, it's a small percentage of our educators in the state come through an alternative pathway. So if we want to make a difference, you need to make a difference on the traditional route and on option 6, because that's where 98% of our teachers come from, is from those two routes. So if you want to do something at scale, you really have to focus on that. So we've kept saying that, but at the same time, we're open to other alternative pathways. So we may see something around supports for the teaching profession, but I think it will be limited in scale this session and perhaps something larger next session, especially if we continue to see the struggles with recruiting staff that we're having right now and hanging on to staff. Some of you may have seen the series of articles that the Herald Leader ran on educator misconduct related to sexual abuse and allegations of that with students. They ran a series of articles a couple of months ago, and then they followed up this Sunday with another series of articles. So it's probably been about 12 or 15 different articles now the Herald Leader has run on this topic. I want to clearly state that I understand that the numbers of educators that are engaged in misconduct in this area is incredibly small and not reflective of the larger teaching profession. However, it is an issue that we need to consider and think about. Do we have sufficient protections in place to prevent that when we have adults that are in positions of power and authority around young people, and what could we be doing? So I think that there will be some legislation introduced around different process for reporting or notice if someone is under an investigation or has been found to have engaged in that unprofessional and illegal activity. The process of notice will be may be different. The mandatory penalties around that may be different. So we're looking at that. We don't know exactly what that's going to look like, but I would not be at all surprised if something around that gets introduced. We're also keeping track of, will we continue to see the culture war bills? And these are the things that are sort of hyper-partisan national politics brought into education. So things like bills that target transgender, LGBTQIA students, and sort of work to marginalize them or otherwise reduce their supports. I'm hearing some of that. Again, we don't know what that's going to look like. We've been clear from the Kentucky Department of Education that as the entity that supports public schools, public means all, and that includes those students. And we want to make sure that they're safe and supported and have access to a quality education, just like everyone else. We may see a return to some kind of critical race theory kind of legislation. I'm not hearing that precisely because they did something last session with Senate Bill 1 around that changed the curricular approval process, and that required these teaching of American principles that we've worked to implement through the social studies standards. It's really a series of documents and concepts that students need to be exposed to in the course of their education. So we're working to implement those. I think comparatively to what other states have done. Kentucky emerged from this fairly well. Again, if we look at, I'm not convinced it was necessary, but if we look at what other states have implemented, I would much prefer what Kentucky has on this compared to other states. For example, we don't have legislation that's like a 1-800 report line to rat out your teacher on that they were teaching a divisive concept in class. I think those sorts of approaches are creeping fascism. They're authoritarian tools. So I'm glad that we don't have that sort of legislation, but we should pay attention because this is still ginned up in the some of the national conversations around education. We may see also sort of related to that some kind of parental rights bill. I don't know what exactly that's going to look like, but if we see in other states, it relates to different notices to parents or requirements to inform parents of different things, which I think that's okay. That's great. We should be informing parents. We want parents involved and engaged in their students' education. So, but we'll have to see what exactly that looks like precisely. Some of these bills have required prior posting of curricular materials. I think that can get to be quite a administrative burden on teachers if you have to post everything online ahead of time. Some teachers have thousands of curricular documents or books in their rooms that you'd have to potentially be logging and uploading all this stuff. Or you have things that change day to day. You may have a student that has a question, or the students become interested in something, or something comes up that they want to talk about. And so how does that work? I'm not sure. So there are, I think, questions around the sort of prior posting of all of this information and what that looks like. And sometimes we see these systems around having community representative groups or councils that evaluate sensitive, obscene materials and decide on those. We may or may not see something like that. A lot of districts have in their policies already. If there's a challenge to the curriculum, that there's a process by which the community can, you bring together a representative group of citizens and people in the schools who evaluate that and make a decision on it. So a lot of policies have that already, but this may require something or clarify it around that. And with the change that was made with Senate Bill 1 last year that moves the authority around curricular decisions to superintendents and boards, you really have elected or someone who's accountable to an elected school board that's making these determinations now anyway. So I'm not sure what that's going to look like in our context, but I hear some rumors about that. So that's sort of my flyover report. I probably took more time than I needed to. I appreciate your time and attention. Just wanted to update you on United We Learn, talk a little bit about the upcoming legislative session and where we are. I'll stop here and see if there are any questions or feedback or anything that you'd like to talk about just for a few minutes. So I think I turn things back to you, Stacy.
Yes, thank you very much. And I want to open up the floor to any TAC member. If you'd like to ask a question or make a comment on something you just heard, feel free to unmute, or you could add that to the chat.
I've got a question from here in Frankfort. Well, I got two questions. Number one, what was the reason for the non-pre-filled or pre-filing of bills? Did they give a specific reason for that? How can we attack that? I hate to use the word attack, but how can we attack that? And that's not just for education, that's for the whole state of Kentucky. So as a constituent, what can I do to do what I need to do to get that changed?
Yeah. Well, the legislature didn't give a clear reason as to why they do it. I can give you my opinion on why I think they did it. And that is that they didn't want, they knew that they had some members of the legislature that were introducing quite controversial bills. And so that was spilling out into public disputes, social media, traditional media, op-eds ahead of time, ahead of the legislative session. So if you introduce a really controversial bill and put it in a pre-file in October, now you've extended that conflict way back several months earlier. And so they're wanting to limit that to just the legislative session and sort of push things through more quickly. That's my guess as to why they did it, but I don't know. I think the only way to change it now is they are still having bills drafted, so they're just not disclosing them to everybody. So I think if that were something that citizens in Kentucky wanted to change, you'd need to tell your legislators that they need to reverse that decision. So I think it's honestly a mixed bag. The legislative process does provide lots of disclosure of, I mean, they post the bills and you can see what's in them, but we don't get them as early as we did before. So there is still transparency with it, but some of the more controversial bills that were pre-filed, we don't get access to those. The people in Kentucky don't get access to those early. So, but directly to your question, what you would do is lobby or talk to your legislator that you don't not in agreement with that new law.
All right. Question number 2 is with the lack of substitutes in our area, I'm from McCracken County. They are required, the substitutes are required to do the same online training that we as teachers are required to do, but they're not paying the subs to do those. And so we've got some retired teachers that said, well, I'm not going to sub if I'm not going to get paid to do all this 6 hours worth of video training. So they're just not coming back and they're done. When we've got excellently qualified educators that could be in the classroom helping us sub, so how do we combat that in our district or in our area?
Yeah, well, that is a real problem. I've always been of the opinion, when I was working in School of Human Resources and then as a superintendent, that if you require people to do something, you need to pay them for it, and that includes training. And I've found here returning to Kentucky, there's a long culture of just adding in trainings and not adding in any supports around compensation for that time. So I think that's part of the culture here. I don't think it's a good thing. I do think we need to value and recognize people's time, and that includes our substitute teachers. So right now, there's no state appropriation to do what you're talking about. So it would be a completely local decision. So locally, your district could say, we're struggling with substitute teachers, and part of that struggle is getting them trained ahead of time so that they're ready to go. So the district could decide that they're going to provide an hourly compensation for participating in training, or provide a stipend. Here's $500 that you get when you complete all of these training modules or something. So there are some ways that you could go about it locally. Of course, there's trade-offs associated with that. I know that's not. It's easy for me to say that, and more difficult for districts to implement it. Thank you. Good questions. Looks like Kenita has her hand up.
Hello, yes, Kenita Ballard, Jefferson County Public Schools. So in reference to the comment on culture wars, not necessarily looking for policy, but practices and responses, with DHS recently identifying our LGBT population, individuals, as coming underneath intense targeting, will there be some type of additional resources that will be provided in the LGBT toolkit from the KDE, or will there be some type of response produced? Because there doesn't look to be a de-escalation, but rather an escalation of things as it concerns our marginalized and minority populations.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the question, Kenita. One of the reasons that we published that list of resources is that we felt that it was important for us as a state agency to provide a quality resource guide for educators, practitioners, and school districts on what is best practices around supporting these students. There's certainly no requirements around the use of it. It's completely just guidance. It's a non-regulatory guidance that we provide from KDE. So some districts use it and some districts don't, or they take parts of it and adapt it as they see fit. We are always open to adding to and modifying that to keep it refreshed and make sure that we're in step with the latest thinking and best thinking on that. So if you have any specific supports around that, I would be delighted to take those and pass them along to the team that works on that. So please, you sound like someone who's spent a lot of time looking at that and maybe have some expertise that could be of value to us. If there's anything that you think we need to be looking at, please just email it to me directly and I'll pass it on to that team. I think looking ahead to the legislative session, I really hope that we don't get gagged as a state agency on being able to talk about these things, because I think it is a population that is under a lot of stress and oppression, and we know that there are higher incidents of suicidal ideation and suicidal completion with this group of students. So I think there is some sort of special care that needs to be taken with those students. So I hope that we're able to continue offering guidance around it. Thank you. Looks like we may have one more. It's Amanda.
Hi, I was with the pre-filing of bills. So I was a part of Hope Street Group, and one of our things that we really focused on was making sure that people are informed about bills. So this pre-filing of bills not being available, what do you recommend to us to help other people be knowledgeable about bills so that way they can contact their legislators when those bills do come? Because I'm afraid that without that pre-filing, we aren't able to know what's out there to help other people be informed.
Yeah, I think you've got a number of quality associations in the state that pay a lot of attention to what the legislature is doing, pre-file or not. And even with pre-filing, you still could have a legislator that would just wait until the legislative session to introduce their bill. And that happens. Bills get introduced all throughout the legislative session up to a point where they drop the curtain on that and say it's too late. But so, the pre-filing did allow us to have access to some bills earlier, but you could still, there were still bills that came out once the session started. So the K groups, as we call them, so it's KEA, KASA, KASS, KSBA. Those are, the main groups, and then there's the Kentucky 120 AFT group that is working in a similar space as supporting teachers as well. So all of them will have bill trackers, and you can usually go to their websites and see what bills have been introduced related to education, what the bill does, a summary of it, a link to the specific language in the bill, and its progress. So bills have to be introduced, they have to be assigned to a committee, they have to get out of the committee, they have to get voted out of both chambers, and then there's a whole process with the governor and the veto process that they go through. So you can see where they are. So I would recommend just
okay. I just didn't know that was still going to be available. I know what those are. I just wanted to make sure that was going to be there still. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, sorry to belabor it. Yeah, but that's what I would do is check out all those associations. They've got different perspectives on bills, I think. So they're usually good to kind of see, look across them. Thanks, Amanda. Okay, looks like that's all the questions. Stacy, I'll turn things back to you. Thank you, advisory. It's great to spend some time with you. I look forward to getting the briefing on the work that you're doing today and any feedback that you have on the items that you're talking about. It looks like a great agenda. So please give us your honest and unvarnished feedback and help us improve as an agency. Appreciate all of you and have a happy holidays.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to ask Jamal to verify that you can see the slide deck. Is it showing on your end?
Yep, I can see it.
Perfect. Okay, I'm getting ready to turn it over to Jamal Stiles, our new Teacher Advisory Council Chairperson. I want to welcome him into this new position. But then also, I want to take a moment to welcome our new members to the Advisory Council. And I'm going to ask, I think we got a little bit of background noise. If you could just make sure that you are muted at this point. But on the slide here, you can see that we have new members who are joining us for the first meeting today. And just want to welcome. I'm going to pause here and just ask each person if you could just give us like a 10-second introduction. Where you teach, perhaps what grade level you teach, maybe some connection to why you applied to be a member of the TAC group. Start with Kenita.
Hi all, my name is Kenita Ballard. I am in Jefferson County. I am a 6th and 8th grade language arts teacher at Grace James Academy of Excellency. I am a alt-cert teacher, so I actually came to Kentucky by way of my alt-cert program, Teach Kentucky. And I really, really appreciate being in a state that values teacher leadership and teacher voice. And we can't talk about problems without being part of the solution. So I really, again, want to take part in the solutions that we're creating to support teacher efficacy and student learning and partnerships between our schools and our communities.
Thank you. Okay, and then just jump in when you see your name.
Hi, I am Sarah Beard. I'm from Estill County. I teach 7th grade science. And I wanted to be a part of this committee because I have just recently really started finding my voice. And I feel like, little Estill County, we need to make sure that everyone, hears from our perspective and we hear from others and we learn from each other. And I'm very excited to be a part of this group.
Thank you.
Hey, I'm Melanie Callahan, and I'm from Laurel County. I teach 6th grade English and 8th grade dramatic arts theater, and I have a particular interest in advocating for the arts and humanities and the visual and performing arts. So that's part of the reason that I definitely wanted to be a part of this council. And I certainly echo Kenita and Sarah's comments that expanding teacher voice and giving ourselves the opportunity to be heard on different issues is vitally important, especially nowadays. So thank you all for having it.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Carla Criswell from Christian County. I teach at the Bluegrass Learning Academy, which is an alternative school here in Christian County. And that was part of my reason for joining the council, is because I want to advocate for those students that are in alternative settings with the learning and making sure that they are receiving equitable education as their traditional A1 schools.
Thank you.
Hi, I am Sharon Collins. I teach at Warren East Middle School in Bowling Green, Kentucky. I teach family and consumer sciences. One of the reasons I wanted to join is to be part of finding the solutions to the various problems that arise among our students with the changing of society. I'm also a career and technical education teacher, so I wanted to be a voice behind that group, but just be there to support our students and what is best for them with the many changes that are arising.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Rosa Cubero. I am from Fayette County. I teach at Maxwell Elementary, which is a Spanish immersion school. So that is called SIP. Spanish Immersion Program is a big program in Fayette County. And I want to echo also Kenita and Sarah. I joined this team because I want to be the solution for some problems that arise in our county. So I want to help. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Chad Davidson from McCracken County, Lonoke Elementary School music teacher, K through 3. Last night was our Christmas program, so I drove in halfway and then the rest of the way this morning. I'm also the government relations team member for my district, first district in Kentucky Education Association. So I'm very active in the legislative process and what goes on there. And it is disconcerting to me on certain items. So that's one reason why I'm on here. The other reason is I want to make sure that we are, as teachers, are treated as the professionals that we are, and how we can make an impact and a difference in Kentucky education.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Carla Lawson, and I'm on week 4 of a raspy kind of voice, so I apologize for that. I teach first grade at Grove Elementary in Whitley County, and I'm excited to be part of this group because I think it gives me an opportunity to be a voice for my coworkers and my peers here in lower southeastern Kentucky. So I'm excited to kind of be a liaison to work between at the state level and the local level. So thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Okay, hi, I'm Amber Ramirez. I teach at Shelby County High School. I teach 11th grade English. I'm excited for this great opportunity because, like similar people have already said, to have a voice in solutions state-wise. I've been able to be part of like district level solutions, so I'm interested to see the similarities and differences.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Donnie Wilkerson from Jamestown Elementary School. I've been learning history and social studies with fantastic 5th graders for now 19 years at the same classroom. Love my job and love my kids. And the main reason I want to be a part of this team is to be an advocate for them, especially in the areas of accountability and assessment.
Thank you. Okay, so once again, welcome to our new members. They will serve a 3-year term. And I am going to now turn it over to Jamal. But one quick thing I do want to say, as Dr. Glass alluded, even though he's not able to stay for the entirety of our meeting, there is a structured feedback loop for information that comes out in our meetings. So there is a written report, a summary report, but then also they have leadership meetings. So different departments within the Kentucky Department of Education, the directors, the associate commissioners and such, they come together and they have leadership meetings and provide this additional information from our meetings to the commissioner. So someone had kind of asked about that, and I just wanted to clarify that there is a structured feedback loop in place. And so anything that we talk about, if he's not here, he's still going to hear about it. So. All right, Jamal, let me turn it over. We've got item 2.
All right, good morning, everybody. I'm Jamal Stiles. I'll be serving as your TAC chairperson for the next year. I'm a teacher at Washington County High School, and I teach biology. So if any time you want something added to the agenda or have a concern concerning TAC, please feel free to reach out to me. You all have my email address, so just feel free to contact me. So we are going to do the roll call of members. And as I call your name, just please unmute and let us know that you're here. And if I say your name wrong, I apologize and please correct me. Okay. As someone whose name is misspelled and said wrong all the time, I appreciate that when people do that. So we have Erica Dill.
Present. Thank you.
Byron Wilson. Chad Davidson.
Here.
Payson Higgins.
I'm here.
Carla Criswell.
Byron is here.
Present.
Sharon Collins.
Here. Thank you.
Jen Davis. Misty Bivens.
Here.
April Jackson.
I'm here, Jamal.
Anita Ballard.
Here.
Amber Ramirez.
Here.
Gregory Smith. He was here and he left, I think. Amanda Claire.
Here.
Susan Sintra.
I'm here.
Rosa Cubero Hurley.
Present.
Sarah Green. Donnie Wilkerson.
Here.
Jane Mocklin.
I'm here.
Sarah Beard.
Here.
Melanie Callahan.
Present.
Carla Lawson.
Here.
Charlene Martin.
Here.
Scott Osborne. Jennifer Stewart. Amanda Leesgang.
Here.
All right, thank you so much. Our next item is to do a summary of the minutes from the last meeting, and those were attached to your calendar invites that Stacy sent out to you. And so I'm just going to give you about, let's say, 30 seconds to go back over those, to look at those, and we need a motion to approve those. And as if you choose to be the person to approve those, please state your name so that we can have those for the record. So we'll need a first and second motion to approve those.
April Jackson, I make a motion to approve them.
Thank you, April.
Chad
Jane
David,
Thompson.
second.
You can have it, it's fine.
Second, Chad Davison.
Really.
All right, thank you all so much. So at any time, you can go to the KDE website and find our agenda and our summary and the PowerPoints, slide presentations from our meetings, and that's on the KDE website. And if any time you need to locate that, you can reach out to myself or Stacy. The next item is a digital sign-in, which is also on the slide deck. For attendance purposes, just to make sure that we got your attendance, please fill out this attendance form link for today's meeting to make sure that we have your attendance noted. And that is located on the slide deck. All right, I'm going to stop and see if anybody has any questions before we move to our next item agenda on the. Okay, so our next item on the agenda is the school report card overview. So we do encourage you to ask questions as we go throughout the process. So if you think of a question, you can type that question into the chat box, and we will make sure that question is answered before that person is finished. Or at the end, when they're done, you can also raise your hand and address them with your question as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Dee Dee Connor from the Office of Education Technology. Dee Dee, thank you for joining us today, and the floor is yours.
Be here. Like I said, I'm Dee Dee Connor. I'm with the Division of School Data Services, and like the title says, we do a lot of data, and we try to serve schools and districts through use of Infinite Campus. We do a lot of federal reporting, and one of the state federal reporting we do is school report card. So it is not a Office of Education Technology initiative. It's an agency initiative. It's all of us working on school report card. And honestly, it's almost a full-time, year-round type, not full-time, but year-round type work, because we're always trying to identify what else needs to be on there, working with our vendors to determine how best to present that information. And then we do go through a 2-month data quality period in the summertime. And obviously, that's not the best time for schools, but as that rolls out, it usually is by mid-July all the way through September. We are working with districts and schools to go through the approval process and verify all the data that's in the school report card. So before we go into the actual card, through show of hands, even those of you online, how many of you say you're very, very familiar with the school report card? Few of you are. So if I said the school report card in Kentucky, we look at it as a suite, and we look at it as we've got an open house site that has got some supplemental data. It's got school and district information, meaning contacts, the best points of contact for your schools and districts. And if I also said the student parent portal is part of the school report card, would your hands go up differently? Because when you think about the school report card and the federal legislation that goes along with this, the state legislation too is very similar. It's about trying to make a report card that is very helpful to your communities. For the most part, probably a lot of the school report card stuff, that information. It's, you may not have the exact number. You probably have a pretty good feel because you're in a school and you kind of are interested, you know what's going on in your school, you know what's going to go on in the district. But when you think about a community and you think about parents, you know, what they really typically want to know is, how's my kid doing, right? What's my, you know, and we understand that with Parent Portal, part of our school report card suite, that can have the best overall impact, because those parents that are engaged in Parent Portal, studies will show that those are more engaged overall, and those students do better. So I don't want to go into our online school report card and be dismissive of the value that teachers have to that one component of our school report card, because without you, the Parent Portal wouldn't be what it is today. It takes teachers being engaged, teachers using that information, teachers keeping grades up to date, to be able to make that really impactful to parents. And we never want to forget that piece of our school report card suite, because as a parent, I was probably one of those helicopter parents. I wanted to see those parents. And you know, my kids are older, so they came out about the time my son was in high school, and he was appalled that I had anything to do with Parent Portal. But I think it's a great tool available to all of us with students. So I'm going to show you the school report card, the online piece of it. But I did want to mention first the fact that we do have such a powerful tool. And I did mention earlier the open house site. So hopefully everybody can see it. We can see it here. But that's the open house site. And this, if you've never been there before, it's openhouse.education.ky.gov. If you click on Learn More Schools and Districts, we hope your contact information is correct. That's one of the most important points of that, because that is how we communicate with folks, with those main contacts. But when you look at the school report card, and you start, this is our main landing page, and you say, okay, where do I want to go? Unless somebody wants me to pick on their district, I'm going to pick on Franklin County today. So I can choose what county I want to look at, and then I can choose all the schools in the districts, and I'm going to pick on Franklin County High School, because there's some data at the school level that's not at the district level and not at the state level. And I want to make sure that I touch on that, because we got a couple arts folks, and some of those groups help drive some of the school profile report, and that is available only at the school level. So when you look at the school report card, and this, please make this interactive, and you all help me that are in the room if you see questions pop up that I haven't seen, but we do want to make sure that I'm answering your questions. So if there's questions you've always wondered about this, I don't have a lot of time today, but I want to make it beneficial to you guys. So when you look at a school report card, you're going to see the landing page here. It just gives you the overall performance rating here. It goes into this information. If you want more information, you really have to go into this view accountability data. And we'll go there in a minute, but I kind of want to just hit the landing page. This is just information. Your superintendent wants to say something a little bit about the district overall and some of their priorities, things like that. There's a place for that. And they do enter that information in what we call the school report card collector during the summer. And it does appear the same for every school. And there's just, your school-based council members are listed. We have information. And you'll see this research data. But for people that really want to dig into the data, that research data is very powerful, because you're getting a data set that has every school, every district in the areas that you want to look. And you can combine that kind of information. And I'll have to do a plug, because we're really trying to get students that it can use data. And I was kept listening for my math folks, and there might be some that were previous. I think nobody said math. But how many people are familiar with STLP? Student Technology Leadership Program. We created a new online offering this year with data analytics. And one of the things we're encouraging the students to do is use either the school report card or the Kentucky Stat site to go in and dig into data and come up with what they feel like it tells them and what their recommendation would be. So we're really trying to do that. So if you've got some math folks, this is a plug, I know. Make sure that you're telling them to, hey, look at this STLP offering. It might be something your math folks versus your traditional, more technology folks would be interested in. But we really want people going to the school report card. A lot of time and effort goes into it. So we've got a lot of information. When you look at the overview, and each section kind of has, a little descriptive question mark of what's in there. So it kind of should help you understand, you're talking about what are your economically disadvantaged students, student demographics. It's talking about what your teacher population is. the faculty gender, the faculty demographics. There's areas, because it's a teacher, I'm not going to go into every single one of these areas, but it does provide you information on the teachers in the building. It will go into, like, you just click on here. Of course, I did a minute ago and it didn't, but there you go. It goes into faculty, staff, and community. A very similar thing throughout the whole process is these tabs. You're going to look, you're going to have faculty counts, faculty profile, parental involvement, the equity. I mean, this is something that, we are required to report. And it talks about students that are, taught by, new teachers, ineffective teachers. Usually it's very small, but, and out of field teachers. So it gives you that information. And, we are merging to a new system, the Kentucky Educator Credential System, or Certification System, I should say, KEX. And that's providing more information. You do have, access to technology, civil rights. I think most of you probably know a little bit about your student population already. But it does provide you a lot of information about the students, the enrollment, your attendance. We've not had chronic absenteeism on the school report card for the last couple of years. It's been a link off of it. But look at that going back. Those numbers have just been, with COVID kind of so dramatically different. We didn't want people to start comparing them from year to year from previously. And then we got all the student groups. So you're talking about dropout and retention. What does your student population look like? And this is helpful and we feel like a lot of folks lose this when they're moving into a new district. They want to look at the school report card, kind of see what the schools are like. This is a good resource for that. But, there may be some surprises. I mean, it provides a lot of information about the student populations within there. And at the school level, you're seeing comparisons from the school, the district, and the state. So you kind of see what those comparisons are to your school compared to other schools across the district or, across the state. We go into academic performance, we get to a lot more information about your assessment results. This is really where you can slice and dice your information. If you're a third grade teacher, you can see your third grade assessment results. If you're a fourth grade teacher, you're probably really interested in those third grade assessment results, right? So you can actually go in and take a look at that data by grade. You can look at alternative assessments. You can look at it by subject area. And this gives you a lot of, this is the slowest one to load. It does load eventually, but you can imagine with all the assessment data in there, it's a lot. But it gives you some, quick views, but then again, you can change it. You can say, okay, this is only offered at 10th grade, but I want to look at it, I want to look at something, I want to look at another assessment. So you've got, again, all these assessments. You've got ACT, you've got English Learner, the Access Score, you've got NAEP, and you've got some progress reports towards state goals that you can actually see how the school is doing and how progress is being made or needs to, maybe some dips because of COVID, and you've got some goals that you're, working on yourself. So that does give you that information. But again, you're looking at it here at a high school, you're looking at it for all students. If I just wanted to switch it, I can switch it and look at it for different subgroups, and I can look at it for different race and ethnicity populations or subject. So a lot of opportunity to kind of dig into data. When you look at career technical education, also had information there. Again, I don't have a lot of time, so if there's an area, raise your hand and I will hit on that for sure. But you look at advanced course participation and dual credit. You won't find this on elementary or middle school, but you see it here. If you look at gifted and talented, you see the gifted and talented program. And you look at general education coursework, and I want to hit this one because you've got some visual performing arts folks here. This gives information about what is offered at the school. This is also, if we were, so you've got information about what is being offered. So folks that are interested in saying, oh, I need a school that's got this. This is an opportunity to showcase what is available at your school. And it goes into what the offerings are, goes into the courses at different grades, and it goes into the program for specific facilities. This information is also on their school profile report. This is actually required part of the school profile report. And if you go into the school site at the very bottom of the school report card landing page, you're going to see a school profile report. And that does highlight all these areas. It highlights visual performing arts, career studies. It performed health and physical education and world languages. These are the areas that, you know, when the legislature said we need a school profile report, I think what they were really trying to do is recognize we've got stuff that's not really required in federal reporting, but it's important stuff that we need to show more about. So this is an opportunity to do that. You know, we welcome any feedback you have on that. Again, we've got a lot of career technical education information at the high school opportunity to learn survey. Last year they took that, well, they take that with the assessment. I think it's the last year they're going to show opportunity to learn. They're going to keep the other two areas of it. But, you know, the opportunity to learn during COVID, the information that the questions and seeing what the results were based on the assessments that we're going to take. And if you haven't seen that, it's very interesting just to kind of see what the student responses are on that. So do, you know, take a look at that information. We do have transition to adult life data. Again, that one is more of a high school area, but it talks about some of your current graduates. And, you know, and these are just counts because you've got school safety data. You've heard the behavior data that, you know, Center for School Safety. This is data we provide to them every year. And then we also, you can click into it here at school accountability, or back where I showed you at the top, where you can go into more of the accountability measures. And then financial transparency is also there. And I mentioned earlier the school, let's see if I can go back to at any time, if you want to go back, you can go back to the district or the state just by clicking. It's a pretty intuitive type of thing, very familiar. But if I mentioned earlier the school profile report, it's just down there. If I can get to it down there at the bottom, it will be down at the bottom of the page. So here right now, but I went back in the district. No wonder I went back. So if you were at a school level, be back at the district. These arrow buttons will take you back. If you're looking at accountability, you know, and you're really, you know, you want to dig into that area and see the different accountability, just click on the accountability dashboard. It's a lot. It provides you a lot of different views. It shows you what the elementary, middle, and high school, and this is all of your elementaries combined together, and all your middle schools and all your high schools, and some of you may only have one, but a lot of you have multiples. So it provides that information at the district level. If you're looking at the school level, obviously it's just your school level data. And it allows you to explore and dig into the data, but it also shows you where different indicators are within the elementary level, middle level, and high school level for each of the accountability measures. But if you explore down into the data, there's a lot more detail. And one of the areas that is new this year, it provides you the student groups. So it shows you when you're looking at the accountability populations, what students fall in each group. So you're seeing that students with disabilities are very low in this area, but you don't have any students in the very high or the high category. So it gives you an ability to kind of see graphically, you know, populations in different groups. So that's a high level, just kind of quick overview. But what kind of questions you have, or are there things that you looked for on the school report card and couldn't find? We're always looking for that kind of feedback.
The ability to do a chronological assessment of the assessment data. For example, looking at African American performance in, say, science over history. Is there a way to track that from school? Is there a set of global data that's coming? Okay.
Well, there has been in the past with the K-Prep test. You could actually see by subject area trends. With Kentucky Summative Assessments new, it's really not comparable trend-wise to K-Prep because it's different. It's aligned to different, current standards and all that. So as we build into year 2, you're going to see trend markers for all of that information within the school report card.
But I guess I'm a little more specific on that. Within the assessment data, the percentage of proficient and distinguished, that would not be standards driven. So you could theoretically compare the number of proficient and distinguished, say in a subcategory, over KCCT, K-Prep, KSA. Right? Am I wrong on that?
I mean, in my perspective, I think it makes sense to me. From our assessment accountability, they've taken a very strong stance. Some of them are here today, and I don't want to put words in their mouth that we really, even at that level, they're not encouraging comparing that. But, I'm not a statistician, and their groups tend to be on that side. So I think looking at it in that way, there are some abilities. When I pulled up the progress towards strike goals, that gives you as close as you can get right now towards the goals themselves. And it does, show your proficiency. And it does break it down by mathematics and the different subject areas. So I think that will give you a lot of what you're looking for. But we really are looking to add more trend type of analysis on this card. And we had kind of started there, working that into that until the assessment changed. And we'll work that back in. But it's a great suggestion, something that we think is very valuable. We agree. Other questions? Anybody online?
Looks like Carla has a question.
I have a question regarding the specialty schools and their data.
Okay.
I know sometimes when you go to report card, they won't have any data reported. And so those scores go where from those students? I can hear.
Somebody muted.
I think you are muted.
Okay, sorry. We got muted by mistake. So I was trying. It really depends on if it's a primary or secondary enrollment. If it's a primary enrollment, the data will be reported directly for that school. And, and some alternative schools do have primary enrollments, and everything would be reported. Other alternative schools are listed as secondary enrollments, and that information goes back to the primary enrollment, wherever they would have gone otherwise. So it really varies by school how they've set things up. But I know from your perspective, in your school, a lot of it depends on what data is in the Infinite Campus. If the school isn't totally utilizing Infinite Campus for a lot of their work, there's no data to put in there. So in some of the alternative schools don't use Infinite Campus in the same way a more traditional school would. And so we're at a loss on what we can provide. But feel free to reach out to me. If there's some things that we could do to improve those alternative schools and that reporting, we would love to, because it's kind of not a good user experience when they go into their schools and they just no data reported, no data available. That's the kind of feedback they've got. So we would love to beef that up a little bit and provide better reporting for those for all schools. So we'd be interested in your ideas.
All right, any other questions for?
I have one. You mentioned briefly ineffective teachers, and like you said, that's a small percentage, but where is that? How do they determine ineffective teachers?
So it's based on the principal's evaluation of the teachers. Mm-hmm. At the state level, we have some conflicting laws. The federal government says we have to report it. This information on an equity basis, and the state legislature says we can't collect it. So we don't know who these teachers are. But what we do is we send out a survey to all the districts, and they report that through a survey without any identifiable information. So the information on that shows what teacher, basically the number of teachers that are ineffective. And then it goes to the populations of students that they serve, because that's how, with equity, it's all about that category of teachers and what populations they serve. So ineffective, inexperienced, and out of field, all three of those are broken down by the percentage of students. Because what they're looking for is they don't want to find that more students, are being taught by, out of field teachers, for instance, in certain classes than other students. Trying to keep that equity balance there.
Right. So then ineffective is coming from principal evaluation.
Yes.
Okay.
Great. That should have been the short answer, right?
No. The rest of that helps solidify it. So
okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
There is a question online that says, I'm curious to know if there's been any discussion about adding credit recovery rates in these reports for high schools.
At the state level, we don't have a good standard for reporting credit recovery consistently statewide. A lot of the data we report on is based on standards. The Office of Education Accountability did a recent study on credit recovery programs, and so I think there's interest in the legislature. I've not heard that there's going to be any proposals, but I guess there always could be based on their study. And then we would have to look at trying to report that more consistently so that we could do some additional reporting. I think there's value there. It's just, how do we get there? We don't have at the state level a requirement to do so. And without that requirement, there's usually not the highest level of data quality on that. And we get into report, we don't want to report a bunch of stuff that's not good. You know, everybody can just say, oh, that report card is not good. We try to really focus on things that we know high quality, need to know, but as we add things, we have to make sure that we also add standards so that we can get to high quality data. Good question.
Any other questions? All right, thank you so much, CD. We appreciate your time and speaking to us today. All right, next on our agenda is the accountability data analysis, and this is Jenny Larkins and Lisa Jett from the Office of Assessment and Accountability, and I will let them take over.
We don't have our slides. Can you share those, Keith? Or
I don't have them. Stacy, do you have their slides?
Stacy, can you share your slides?
I sure can.
Thank you. We don't have much on there actually, because we're just going to talk through a couple things. So I'm Jenny Larkins, and I have with me Lisa Jett. And as he mentioned, we are from the Office of Assessment and Accountability. And we learned that the TAC was interested in accountability data analysis. So we've come this morning to share with you a resource that our office has created. It's brand new. In fact, it was just shared out in our weekly communication and posted to our website yesterday. But we've been working on it over the last month or so. And as we're developing it, we worked with our district assessment coordinators, or DACs, some of our more experienced ones that really are rock stars in data analysis. And they helped us quite a bit with what's contained in the document. But one of the first things that we noticed in talking to them is that every one of them takes a little bit different approach on how they analyze the data. And it really depends on how the size of their district. It depends on the student demographics, what the population of their students, and what their local boards or their district staff have prioritized. So they each handle it a little bit different way. So in our document, we did not try to endorse or include just one method of data analysis. Instead, we took the approach that we would give sort of a protocol that any district could follow using their own information and things that are important to them. But it's something that we want to continue to develop. We know there's a need out there. People ask us questions a lot about what do we do with this data? So it's something that we want to develop, but if you go to the next slide, please, Stacey, we appreciate it. We're going to run through the document, just what's contained in it. It's 13 pages, so we're not going to go through all of that, just kind of tell you what's in there, and then give you opportunity to ask questions if you have them. But then we'd like to get some ideas from you. How does your school, or how do you analyze assessment and accountability data? And then what do you think we can help with as far as we continue to develop? What kinds of guidance is missing? What do you feel like we need this from the department when we're analyzing data? So on the next slide, we've got a link here. Now, I told you it was posted just yesterday, but we had to submit these slides last week. So that link doesn't take you directly to the document. It takes you to the web page where the document is located. If you go to that link when you have time later, it's called the 2022 Accountability Data Analysis Document. And it starts out with just kind of a general protocol, like I said, of what districts can do based on their own specifics. So we kind of lead with starting with your overall score. Now, you saw Miss Dee Dee do a great demonstration of the data in the school report card, and you saw those dashboard dials where there was a little arrow pointing to a color. Well, every school, as you know, gets an overall performance rating, and it's reported as a color. So if you start there, that's a great place to look. We have linked in the document, and it is in the document, the actual link to the document, called School Performance Level Descriptors. So those will tell you what it means to be a blue school, what it means to be a red school, what it means to be a yellow school. It's like the description of the performance level. So as an example, for yellow, it will say that if your school was rated as yellow, that most of your indicators were medium, or you could have a combination of indicators that were high and some were low. So it kind of goes through the what that color means. That's a great place to start. And then we recommend after that to break that overall performance rating down into the various indicators that all work together to give you that rating. So one example is the state assessment results in reading mathematics. And those content area assessments, the indicators that go with that, those are probably of the most interest to teachers. And you can see a lot of the data on that in the school report card, as Dee Dee shared. But as teachers, you have access to other data that we don't report in the school report card, that data that are for specific students on their performance levels. Were they novice, apprentice, proficient, and distinguished? You saw in the school report card that we report by student demographic group. That's something else that you have access to for your own school students, your classrooms, individual students. You can see who falls into which category. So we ask you to do that. And then the bulk of the document is really about those indicators and how to analyze those. So we provide a section of data discussion points or questions you can ask for each one of those indicators to kind of help you dig deeper. Because that's one of the things we noticed with the DACs is that they start at the top, but they just keep digging deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper until they find out what they need to find out. So they do root cause analysis, and Lisa's going to tell you a little bit about that. To see, well, why are students performing a certain way? So we've tried to provide just, again, these things that can get you started in the discussions. And that's the most important thing, is that you are having the discussions about the students and how to improve on that. So Lisa's going to share what else is in the document.
One of the sections within the document is concerning student demographic groups. We do have some suggestions in there. We do recommend not to just compare your student demographic groups to all students, but to compare them to their counterpart. Using the opposite reference group when looking at the student demographic group can usually give you a different story. And then with that teacher data that you receive, you can look further within that demographic group. So if you want to compare your students who are free and reduced lunch to your students who are non-free and reduced lunch, as opposed to just compare your free and reduced lunch students to all the students. You can then look further, within your free and reduced lunch students, you have students with IEPs. Then look at your students without free and reduced lunch. Do those students have IEPs, and can you compare them? And what do you notice within those counterparts? Another section we have that the DACs brought to us when we did ask them was the performance level descriptors. It is very helpful when trying to understand. Let me start again. When looking at the connection to the data in the classrooms, it is helpful to understand the NAPD performance level descriptors. Those are for the KSA and the AKSA. These performance level descriptors indicate the performance on groups of items that measure similar skills. And when you have an understanding of what it means to be a novice, what it means to be an apprentice, you can then look further. How am I going to take this student from a novice and move them to apprentice? What is it that they need to know? What exactly does that mean? That is located within this document. We do have a link to it, as well as on the Assessment and Accountability page under the Kentucky Summative Assessment tab.
The last section within the accountability data analysis document would be links to additional tools and resources. We know there are numerous resources out there to help guide you in analyzing the data, but we did highlight a few that we thought were really helpful and insightful. One being the KDE resource page, review, analyze, and apply data. That is linked within there. But Jenny had mentioned root cause analysis. We do have two documents linked in there concerning the root cause analysis. One of them, I'm going to read the title from my notes so I don't get it wrong. It's pretty long. Using root causes analysis as part of continuous improvement process in education. And that comes from the Office of Elementary and Secondary Education. This resource is designed to provide districts with information on root cause analysis as part of your school improvement plan. There's also linked within the accountability data analysis document, the root cause analysis workbook. And that is presented by the Center of Great Teachers and Leaders. And this workbook takes you through the 8 steps for conducting a root cause analysis within your school so that you can figure out what is that root cause, where and what steps do I need to take to move forward. So circling back to Jenny's original question, can you kind of share with us how your school analyzes assessment accountability data? And on the same note, what do you feel like you might still need as guidance from us that we could include into this document?
We pretty much look at the data to analyze it based on our subgroups to see their performance and how we can help them move out of that novice apprentice range into proficiency and distinguished. For me, I would like to get data on the standards, like what percentage of students scored proficient on 8.1 C or 2.5 that was assessed. I think that would be helpful for teachers to see which skills those students are missing in preparing for next steps. And we're able to see which standards students scored well on and didn't score well on.
Are you familiar with the released items that have recently come out from our office? The assessment released items?
From this year?
Yes.
No, ma'am.
Well, we, on the Pearson portal, and I can follow up and give Stacy the link to that. I think yesterday we released editing and mechanics, and then prior to that we had social studies and science. Was it science? Okay. Yes. So within those released items, there is that kind of data that you were just talking about. And you get that for your schools if you want to talk with your principal, where you can see how your students performed on those released items. It's not every standard that was on an assessment, but it gives you an idea of how they were performing on those released items anyway.
Back during K-Prep or KCC days, you had the ability to track they called them open response at the time. Open response, say in social studies in government versus multiple choice in government. We lost that with the advent of K-Prep. We see any anticipation of getting that kind of data is very, very helpful, and we've not had that for the last several years.
I'm not aware of that specific. I know that the leadership in our office are continually working with our test vendor to try to get more information to the schools. I'm not sure when those kinds of things might happen. Now, something you mentioned made me think we did provide a little more data to the schools this year on like the subdomains, so that kind of match the blueprints, but it's probably not as detailed as you're looking for.
It's very, very general. The other bit of information that would be very helpful is to have the latest validity and reliability studies, because you almost need to look at that to judge the quality of the data.
I have a question, but I don't know if question directly. I guess one of the things that I'm on the United We Learn Council, so awesome. I love the work that we're doing and very excited to see how it's going to progress. One, what are your thoughts on the ideas of reforming accountability and assessment, and how do you have thoughts on what that type of reporting would look like? And I guess one of the other things too is when we review these data, we all know as teachers, this test happens in a snapshot of like a 4-hour window on a day where we don't know if the kid had a terrible day at home or had any food to eat, or, you know, all of the variables that come into account. Is there any way when you all are processing this that we consider any of that? I mean, I don't think there is, but I guess
processing is document.
Yeah.
Well, there is one section in here where Lisa mentioned about the classroom data, where we do talk about the importance of what you're doing in the classroom compared to this once a year test. And, you know, we talk about connecting that in some way. For example, does what you see on this assessment match what you're seeing every day in the classroom? Or does the report card look different than what you see on the state assessment? Those kinds of things. But we haven't gone into a lot of that because we have to implement the accountability system that we have now.
Right.
But as things progress with the United We Learn work, then, you know, we will obviously adjust what we're putting out to communicate with that also. And just as far as what is our thoughts about it, we're all in. Our offices are in. Dr. Stafford is our director. She leads the Accelerating Innovation Committee.
Okay.
For the you probably met her.
Yes.
So yeah, we're very involved in it and excited about it also.
Okay, good.
Not specifically related to this, but I will mention that we did, Office of Teaching and Learning did align all the data, all the academic standards. We got those in Infinite Campus and we pushed those out to all districts. Those are available to use. I know a lot of folks are using Google Classroom, but within campus, you can align those standards to the curriculum, standards to the assessments, and really, you know, it doesn't have to be state assessments, it can be your own internal assessments to really give you some immediate feedback. The tools are there. KDE has been paying for classroom learning, Infinite Campus learning with ESSER money, so to make those tools available more broadly to everybody. So, but it does take some work at the district level to kind of.
So we already have, so you're saying in Infinite Campus, we already have our standards loaded in there? That's interesting. I didn't know.
All been loaded in. It doesn't mean you've used them, but it means we pushed them all down, hoping people would use them. And because it does allow you to align your instructional materials and align, there's new tools coming out, you know, that are available on campus where you can share some of your instructional materials that have already been aligned and so forth. And then the school or district type assessment to that work.
Interesting. Okay.
There might be a hand up online.
Anita, did you have a question?
I did. I'm so sorry. I got kicked out. Technology. So a question that I had in regards to next step and additional resource is when looking at our writing scores, at one point in the state of Kentucky, we had marker papers, tracer papers that actually progressed what student writing should look like from K all the way to 12, so that instead of being responsive to data, teachers were able, reactive to data, teachers were able to be responsive with data, having an example of, again, what effective and efficient writing looked like when it came to it being assessed. So it's not necessarily a question or commentary about the data analysis process, but what feeds into it is the front loading of, okay, where's our exemplar work? Where's our student work? Because that does play into a role of, even like at the most basic level in our classroom, of us looking at student work to be able to do a data analysis process.
Thank you. And when were you online when I responded to Carla's question about the released items?
I think
don't know if you connected or not.
I was, but I was getting kicked off.
Okay. Well, those released items that we talked about have that kind of information in there, and they have those exemplars, those examples of student responses and why they were scored a 0, a 1, a 2, and so on. And again, I'll follow up with Stacy and make sure that all of you have the link to those. And we, I guess, I'm trying to think of what I'll say. So yeah, we'll share that link.
Okay, any other questions?
Ladies, I have a question here. We're what I call a one-shot wonder school because we're K through 3. So we just teach, we just test for 3rd grade. So the previous year's 3rd grade test, so we get compared with a group of students that, in essence, this is the first time they've ever taken the test. So why don't we give the 3rd grade students in August a test or some type of assessment, and then the exact same assessment, maybe, different type of questions, but the same type of assessment at the end of the year. And that gives my school a better look. I mean, we're a blue school, okay? We blew it out of the water. Our faculty is amazing, and our kids are amazing. So I think we're doing a good job, but it would be nice for 3rd grade at least, to get a better grasp of what, and I know it all comes back to money because the test takes a lot of money and it takes time to assess. I've heard that for years, okay? But I still think that there can be a better way to get that first assessment look at where in August, here's where they were. In May, here's where they are. Yeah, you're a blue school because you did amazing work with these kids, especially after the years that we've had. So that's just a suggestion. When you're in a K-5 school, you've got 3, 4, 5, boom, boom, boom. They're able to look and see growth better than, all right, 3rd grade, we test, boom, we'll see you later. All right, we got a brand new crop of kids, and they are far different from the kids that we just had. Just a thought.
Thank you. We'll definitely
A lot of schools do use more of your interim or your formative assessments to do that type of work.
Yeah, we use STAR, which is a, that works. It gives us the beginning of the year and the end of the year, and we get to see growth and progress there. But that STAR doesn't translate into Kentucky Department of Education, putting us under the blue school, red, yellow, green, purple, black, white, whatever color it is. So that's just where I'm coming from with that.
I will mention, and it won't really help you, but there is a benchmark report in Infinite Campus that has every student listed. And this was the kind of a feedback from, I would go into schools and we did our district webcasts and, at the districts, and they would have these war rooms that they were so proud of. They were spending tons of time putting pictures up of where they're scored and having the lines all across the room. The benchmark report basically does the same thing for your population of schools. It shows students their kindergarten readiness scores and then every assessment they've had. For you, that doesn't really help. But if you're really trying to do student analysis and trying to see how students are progressing
but it does help
way.
internally.
Yeah.
With our group of kids. Yeah. And of course, everybody in this room and everybody online knows that we transient kids. They're in and out. And my school is no different than anybody else's. So you get a kid that comes all the way up and boom, they're gone. And they would have been a distinguished kid, and then you get other students that are coming in and, all right, well, their scores have got to go with our school, even though they were at this school learning throughout the year. And I think some of that we could revamp as well. But I know there's a certain days and all that stuff. But yeah. But I don't know.
Excuse me. Yeah. I don't mean to interject, and I want to extend our gratitude to Jenny and Lisa for sharing information. But I just wanted to point out that we've got about 30 minutes left in our meeting, and that boardroom, there's another meeting that's getting ready to start at noon, and we've got a few more people who are on our agenda. So if there are any kind of links, or if people have additional questions, you could put those in the chat, or you could directly email me and I'll follow up with that. Is that okay?
Sounds great. Thank you. Thank you so much. Welcome to the members.
Invite me back. I want more Infinite Campus.
Thank you, Lisa and Jenny. All right, next on our agenda is item number 5, which was something that people wanted, was the feedback item that people wanted to hear about. And that is the CTE Basics Professional Learning Library. So if you'll go ahead and I think I can't see my screen. There you go. Stacy, if you'll share the screen so we can see the slides. Okay. All right.
I think Reagan's going to share. Is that right,
Okay.
Reagan?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Thank you. Can you guys see and hear me all right?
Yes, we can
Yes,
see
thank
you.
Yep.
Great. I actually just popped a link in the chat, and I will be very brief because I know we are on a time crunch. And so I just plan to share a helpful resource from the Office of Career and Technical Education. My name is Reagan Satterwhite. I'm a former Family and Consumer Sciences teacher, and I now serve as the Executive Advisor for the Office of Career and Technical Education. I have the pleasure of being able to share this awesome resource with you, but I don't get any of the credit for it. Teresa Rogers in our office poured her heart and soul into this work and creating these resources for teachers and counselors in our CTE community and other academic teachers as well. And she has just done an excellent job, and we're going to miss her. She's retiring at the very first of the year. So although she's the brains behind this project, if you do have questions about it, please reach out to me in the Office of Career and Technical Education. So I'm actually going to share my screen, but I'm going to click on the link from the chat to make sure that it works. There are a couple different ways to access the site if you don't save the link. You can always access it from the main KDE website. If you go to Office of Career and Technical Education, there is a resources tab of the OCTE page, and it's listed there. It's housed on SharePoint, so all Kentucky schools and Kentucky teachers will have access to it. And if you go to SharePoint, you can get there when you click on OCTE. And then this is the main homepage, the landing page. The landing page is a description of what the library is intended for. It's an on-demand professional learning library designed to bridge the knowledge gap between general education and career and technical education. There are short targeted sessions within this library that provide a basic overview of career and technical education that might be needed by teachers and counselors as they engage students in career conversations, exploration, and development of their individual learning plan. This is a graphic that shows the intent of the Kentucky Academic Standards for Career Studies. These standards were released in the academic year 2021-2022, and they are to be embedded in activities at the elementary and middle school level, and within each of our career and technical education courses and pathways at the secondary level. So this graphic also shows some intent behind career exploration and career studies at each of the levels. In elementary school, we simply want students to be aware of the various career options that are out there. Elementary school students are traditionally taught, nurse, teacher, firefighter, police officer, but the intent of the standards is to help build awareness at that age of the multiple different types of careers that are actually out there in the real world. In the middle school level, we want students to begin to engage in those conversations. And in high school, we really want them to start diving into a career that they are interested in exploring further, and perhaps participating even in some work-based learning opportunities so that they've got that real experience and they know if that career is well suited for them, and they're better prepared either for that career as they graduate or to enter a post-secondary program. So there's some other resources here that I'll show you. You can click on elementary, middle, high school, and even some resources to help your individual schools and districts as students complete their individual learning plan, their ILP. There's a navigation tab over at the left-hand side. When you go to CTE Basics, there are a plethora of resources that explain different topics, some guidance documents, some one-pagers, And Teresa Rogers has even created multiple PowerPoints where she goes in depth and does a voiceover on the slides of the PowerPoint. So they are a fantastic resource, not only for teachers, but even if you had to send it to explain what dual credit is to a parent or what an industry certification is. As that is now part of post-secondary readiness measure, it's really important to be able that we're describing that to our community. There's also a great resource about work-based learning, and CTE 101 basically is what you'll find here. Some elementary studies resources are available in the library. Middle school resources are available in the library. Several different videos that will be beneficial to all audiences. So we're excited about it. We know that it will be helpful. We hope that you guys as teachers not only find it useful, but hopefully you can spread the message to the teachers and the counselors in the districts that you work with. So that's really it, just to share that resource. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Any questions for Reagan about these resources? Sharon says they're awesome. Great elementary activities. All right, no questions.
Thank you for your time today, and I've been really impressed with the discussion that I'm hearing from our teachers.
Thank you so much. All right, next on our agenda is item number 6, which is Senate Bill 1 update. And Natasha Stein and Ruth Swanson from the Office of Continuous Improvement and Support will be presenting on that topic for us.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, TAC members. My name is Natasha Stein, and I'm an Assistant Director in the Division of School and Program Improvement, and I'm joined by my colleague, Ruth Swanson. She is the Program Manager of District 180, and we're in the same division here at KDE. We do look forward to spending time with you to share information regarding Senate Bill 1 from 2022, but in full disclosure, I do want to share that our conversation is going to be focused on the impacts to school-based decision-making councils, which is a program that our division oversees. So I wanted to begin with just a quick overview. I know we're pressed for time here, but Senate Bill 1 passed on April 13th, this past legislative session. There was an emergency clause in the bill regarding COVID leave. However, the remainder of the bill did not take effect until July 14th. Within Senate Bill 1, there's embedded language regarding the Teaching American Principles Act, which the commissioner alluded to when he opened up today's meeting, which requires the incorporation of 24 fundamental American documents and speeches into the social studies standards. However, Senate Bill 1 most notably impacted the transfer of curriculum decisions and principal selection from SBDM councils to superintendents, which we all know as hallmarks to the Kentucky educational ecosystem for some time now. So those are the implications that we're going to focus on during our time here with you this morning. On the next slide, we have here basically a resource for you. Since the bill's passing in April, the department has been tracking several questions regarding Senate Bill 1, and we've compiled all of those into a guidance resource to assist districts and schools as they're trying to navigate through the bill's implications. Ruth dropped the link to that resource for you in the chat box in the event that you haven't seen it yet, but it does cover any and everything related to Senate Bill 1 as far as school-based decision-making is concerned and the work that comes out of our division here at the office. So that is a resource that we wanted to make you aware of because it may certainly already include some of the questions that you have, and then you'll find some of our responses to those as well. We are going to dive into some of the notable changes related to Senate Bill 1. KRS 16345, which if you've ever served on a school-based decision-making council, you know that that is the SBDM statute. Within that statute, it now notes that each district superintendent has the authority to select a school's curriculum It's textbooks, instructional materials, and student support services. We bolded several key words for you on the screen to reiterate that the statute outlines several processes that must take place before any final decision is made. The superintendent is required to consult with both the SBDM Council and the local Board of Education before any decision is made on curriculum, textbooks, instructional materials, and student support services. And in addition to that, the superintendent must also allow for a reasonable response period for stakeholders in accordance with local Board of Education policy before any final decision is made. So it is your local boards of education who bear the responsibility of creating a policy that superintendents must follow with regard to curriculum, textbooks, and the other items there on the screen. So we wanted to also share some changes that impact the curriculum policy at SBDM schools as well. So even though SBDM councils no longer select the school's curriculum as we understand it or understood it from years past, SBDM councils are required to have a curriculum policy still. However, that curriculum policy addresses the school's writing program. And at the department, as we issue non-regulatory guidance, we also like to share model policies that schools can use to assist them in the process of amending their curriculum policy. And so we do have a model policy. Ruth just dropped the link for you in the chat box. To help ease some of the confusion that schools may experience, we even named the policy curriculum policy, but in parentheses, and as you're seeing here on the screen, we've also included the words effective writing program, because that is the authority of the school council to write a policy in regards to the school's writing program. And also, because the curriculum policy now addresses the school's writing program, it is not necessary for a school to have both a curriculum policy and a writing policy. Instead, the curriculum policy is sufficient since it does address the school's writing program. Next slide, please. So principal selection was another notable change with Senate Bill 1. The superintendent selects the candidate to fill a principal vacancy, and councils are no longer required to undergo principal selection training. But just like with curriculum selection, the superintendent is required to consult with the council before extending an offer to a candidate. And during this consultation process, council members are required to sign a non-disclosure agreement forbidding the disclosure of information that's discussed during consultation. And Senate Bill 1 requires now that if a council member is found to be in violation of that non-disclosure agreement, he or she may be subject to removal from the school council by the Kentucky Board of Education. There is an exception to what I just shared with you, though, about principal selection. And that exception is for those councils that operate in a consolidated local government, or our friends in Jefferson County. The statute outlines a different process for those school councils. Those councils will follow the traditional principal selection method that we're accustomed to, and that they review applications, they can interview candidates, they select a candidate by majority vote, with the caveat that that selection is subject to approval by the superintendent. And if the superintendent does not approve the candidate, the superintendent can select the school's principal. So we're seeing two different principal selection processes outlined in statute as a result of Senate Bill 1. So we wanted to share a little bit with you about the consultation policy for SBDM councils. So Senate Bill 1 has tasked school councils with the responsibility of updating their current consultation policy. So, and this is on the next slide. So the school's current consultation policy is required of every school council The exception here, the responsibility here as a result of Senate Bill 1 is that those policies must be updated to include processes that the superintendent will follow to assist with principal selection. So whatever a council has in its consultation policy, the superintendent will follow those procedures, and they are to address meetings, timelines, a review of applications, a review of references. And just note here that the council's policy must be consistent with local board policies on principal selection. So it is a delicate balancing act there of making certain that there is alignment. So Ruth shortly will share with you some model consultation policies that we've issued. We can move to the next slide. So just like with the curriculum policy, we amended our model consultation policies. We now have two, one for consolidated local governments and one for everyone else. And so we basically distinguish those through title. So it's a model consultation policy that everybody in the state will follow, with the exception of Jefferson County, and our friends in Jefferson County will reference the model consultation policy, consolidated local government only policy, to assist them with their work as well. I did see a question in the chat box with regards to, is this the same for assistant principals? And the answer to that is no. So this will be limited to the school's principal only, to the selection of the school's primary instructional leader of the building of record. It's a good question. Okay, next slide, please. As I shared with you earlier, only those SBDM councils in Jefferson County are required to undergo a principal selection training. We do have a principal selection guidebook to accommodate Jefferson County's training needs, and we updated that. However, we do want to emphasize that the contents of this guidebook represent best practices in both scenarios, in both a consolidated local government and then a non-consolidated local government. So we're encouraging all of our council members throughout the state to engage in that guidebook, to read it, to understand what's required of them and some of the expectations there as well. Next slide, please. The last Senate Bill 1 change that I wanted to highlight with regard to the SBDM context anyway is related to budget determinations. While the superintendent selects the instructional materials and the student support services after consultation and that review and response period that I alluded to earlier, the appropriation of those items is determined by the principal after consulting with the school council. So once a council knows how much Section 6 money or instructional supplies money, the principal will determine how much of those funds will be appropriated to the endeavors that were chosen by the superintendent. And then our last slide here, for ease and convenience, we placed all of the resources on one slide for you. So we have the Senate Bill 1 guidance document, the model policies that we've issued, as well as that principal selection guidebook. And that concludes what we have prepared to share with you, and certainly are available for questions, any questions that you may have.
Awesome, thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Natasha? Okay, thank you, Natasha. We appreciate you. All right, next on the agenda is Misty Higgins from the Office of Teaching and Learning, who will be talking to us about developing curriculum at the local level.
And Jamal, can you see my slides?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm going to try to go through this quickly. I think you've got the State Board of Education coming into that room in just a few minutes, and I'll be able to build off of some of what Natasha shared with you all. But my name is Misty Higgins, and I am one of the professional learning coordinators in the Division of Program Standards in the Office of Teaching and Learning. And, you know, I know that you all have had some questions about that Senate Bill 1, and I was asked just to kind of share and update you on the work that we are doing in the Office of Teaching and Learning regarding that local support for developing curriculum at the local level, specifically in response to that portion of Senate Bill 1. And so as we get into this, there is a little bit of background context that I want to build for you because it does impact all of the work that we do around it and the way in which we approach this in the Office of Teaching and Learning. And that is knowing how Kentucky law defines standards, curriculum, and instructional resources. So in Kentucky, standards address a foundational framework of what is to be learned. They establish the minimum of what students have to know and be able to do by the end of a grade level. So the standards are the what. Curriculum addresses how learning experiences are designed at the local level. So the purpose of curriculum is really to focus and connect the work of classroom teachers across the district to the standards, assessment, and the instructional practices necessary for students to reach the grade level expectations. So the curriculum is really the how. And then in Kentucky law, instructional resources in general, they are defined as the print, non-print, or electronic medium designed to assist student learning. So the key word there is assist. So in Kentucky, instructional resources support the implementation of a locally developed curriculum that is aligned to the Kentucky academic standards. And so while Kentucky law does define instructional resources in general, we all know that the market is just saturated with an abundance of instructional resources, and not all of those resources are of high quality. So it's also important to understand how KDE is defining high quality instructional resources. So take just a minute and read over that definition on the slide. And so the use of high quality instructional resources, and you'll often hear me say HQIRs for them, that's not only a focus here in Kentucky, but nationally as well, because you will see the need for them now explicitly called out in the professional learning standards from Learning Forward, as well as the new version of the Danielson framework. So part of the work that we have been doing in the Office of Teaching and Learning is really focusing on providing guidance to districts to ensure that they are selecting high quality instructional resources to support the implementation of their local curriculum. And then in terms of responsibility, you all probably already know this, the state's responsible for establishing the standards and the development of curriculum and the selection of resources. It is at the local level. And on this next slide, I'm not going to stay here too long because Natasha just went over this with you. So the big thing to point out is that Senate Bill 1 from 2022 did shift that responsibility away from the site-based council to the superintendent. But again, those notes about in consultation with, as well as a review and response period, it leads to the work that we are doing and how do we really provide superintendents with support around that. Now, there is quickly one other piece of legislation that affects our work that you all may not be aware of, and that is KRS 1596451. And this is the statute around what is called the Model Curriculum Framework. So within this statute, the KDE is charged with providing guidance to local districts and schools in several areas. And if you look at that bolded section on this slide, you can see two of the areas in which we are supposed to be providing that non-regulatory guidance. It is in the areas of curriculum development and selection of instructional resources. So when you get into the actual model curriculum framework, so this is a document that we have been revising in OTL for the past 2 years, you can see those are the big bucket areas that we address within the document. But if you look at that first main section after the introduction, it is something called the curriculum development process. So this is our non-regulatory guidance to districts around how they might develop a local curriculum that is aligned to the Kentucky academic standards and how they might support, select those high quality instructional resources to support implementation. We recently revised this process to again match with the language from Senate Bill 1 and some of the requirements built within that. And so what I really want to do is take just a couple of minutes to highlight for you what this process is, just give you a high level overview, as well as how it builds in that stakeholder inclusion so that it truly gives the local superintendent a process that is very transparent, and it includes stakeholders throughout to first ensure that this work is not done in isolation, and second, to build the necessary commitment from teachers and leaders to actually implement the curriculum and the selected high quality instructional resource. So there are 4 phases to the process, and they are meant to be completed in the order in which they are written, because the work of one phase will drive and support the work of the next. Now, phase 1, this is much more at the leadership level, because it is thinking through things like the budget, the timeline, and other logistics to help streamline the work and just make it more manageable. But you will notice that step 4, so the last step in phase 1, is guidance around forming a district curriculum team. And within the document, we recommend that that team is composed of teacher representatives from various grade levels and schools throughout the district. It includes instructional coaches as well as school and district administrators to, again, have many representatives from those various role groups to really do the work of phase 2 and phase 3. And we also recommend that as they look at the makeup of that district curriculum team, that it really does include equitable representation to provide voice to diverse experiences and perspectives throughout the process. So then in phase 2, the curriculum team that's been formed, the very first thing that they are going to do together is to engage in a collaborative analysis of the Kentucky academic standards and current research for teaching and learning in the content area focus, while also matching that to an inventory of local needs. And then based on that analysis and their shared understanding, they would articulate a K-12 instructional vision of what they want that vibrant student experience to be in that content area in all classrooms across the district. But again, going back to that stakeholder inclusion, the process recommends that stakeholders have opportunities to provide feedback during the drafting of the instructional vision, including site-based councils, Board of Education, teachers, leaders, and community members. Then in phase 3, this is driven by the instructional vision that's formed out of phase 2, and the team now works to select a primary high quality instructional resource that's aligned to that instructional vision, and then they develop the local curriculum documents that are anchored in that selected high quality instructional resource. So the CDP itself, the curriculum development process, is written in very general guidance. So we have the content area consumer guides to now support phase 3, step 1. And when you look at our consumer guides, what they are going to do is they are going to lift out what are the specific characteristics of high quality resources that we want to evaluate resources against for a particular content area to first ensure alignment to the Kentucky academic standards. And then second, when we think about equity, the consumer guides will include 5 equity lenses that are the same across all content areas, but it will state what are some of the look-fors for each equity lens that you're looking at in this particular content area as you evaluate resources. We currently have the reading and writing consumer guide available. The math consumer guide will be available in spring of 2023. And then we're getting ready to start working on the science consumer guide. So we're working on them a little bit as we're able to do that. But again, the consumer guides will give that curriculum team the support that they need to ensure that what they are selecting truly goes back to that KDE general definition of aligned to the standards, that is culturally relevant, free from bias, and accessible for all students. And then once again, I just want to point out that in phase 3, it's all about that stakeholder inclusion, because at the beginning, when you're determining what are the selection criteria that the team will use as they evaluate resources, we have tools built in to basically help get stakeholder feedback to help inform those selection criteria, as well as later in phase 3, when you're narrowing it down to like the 3 or 4 resources you're considering, having that review and response period for people not on the team, including community members, other teachers, other leaders, and students, to give feedback on those resources. So all of that is built into phase 3. And then quickly, I'll just say phase 4 is all about implementation and monitoring. And the way that stakeholder inclusion is built into this is we recommend that they are constantly gathering input from teachers and leaders to what is the professional learning that you need to successfully implement this curriculum and this resource, and how can we collaboratively alongside our staff set implementation goals, monitor those goals, and make those necessary adjustments over time. And quickly, I will just kind of skip ahead here. I do want to point out we have a toolkit that we've recently released to support local implementation of this process. And the first column, so we have a toolkit for each phase. That first column is really about professional learning support at the local level to better understand the particular phase. The second and third columns, they contain artifacts and videos from pilot districts that have gone through this process to help other districts better envision what this work might look like, specifically from other Kentucky schools, just to help guide that process. So you all have links to the slide deck. I know I went through it quickly because we're almost out of time, but you can see my email address there, as well as Fox. He's our other professional learning coordinator. I did link in the curriculum development process document itself, as well as the reading and writing consumer guide. And just like Natasha, there's that link to the SB1 guidance for you. So again, quick, I'll pause there because I know we're at the end.
Sharon did have a question about, will the curriculum teams be looking at curriculum for all areas, like special areas like RP, film, consumer science, music, or just the content, core content areas?
That's a great question. In the very beginning of the CDP, we recommend establishing a local curriculum review cycle so that every year you would be using this process with only 1 or 2 content areas at a time, just so that it's actually manageable and each and every content area gets the attention that it deserves. So in our sample curriculum cycle, you would see all of the content areas, not just the core represented in that.
Okay, awesome. All right, so for sake of time, if you do have any other questions, Misty's information is on the slide. You can email her those as well. Okay, so next, Stacy.
Yeah, we have Jessica Green, who's doing the Visual Performing Arts Standards Update. And so I guess maybe we could ask Jessica if she would like to share her slides today, her presentation, or perhaps move it to the March meeting. I want to give this particular topic its just time. So just hearing from Jessica. Are you on, Jessica?
I am. Hello. It was wonderful listening in on your meeting. So thanks for having me. I am okay with sharing in March. I will have clearly more information about where we are in the VPA standards review process, but I'm also fine with giving information today. I want to be respectful of your time as well.
Yeah. Okay. Jamal, do you want to poll the group, or we do have to exit that room around 12-ish. I don't think they're going to run us out right at noon, but maybe just.
So is everybody okay with waiting till March? Because she will have more information in March about the standards process. I'm seeing some head nods, yes. Okay. So we'll wait till March. Thank you, Jessica, though, for being here today, and we look forward to hearing from you in March.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I look forward to seeing you all. No, you're fine. Hey, it's all part of the process. I'll see you all in March.
Thank you.
We've had a lot of good information today. I will say check the chat box because Dr. Darnell posted some words in there, so I will let you all read that and what he said to us.
And Dr. Darnell was going to share with us information about the legislative session, providing an update. I know Dr. Glass touched on several of those topics this morning, different updates about that, but Dr. Darnell,
well,
hey,
add anything else? No, you all are, it's level one. I have to jump to the next thing. But as I said in the chat, I just cannot express enough gratitude for you all for being a part of this process and what you all are doing every day. So I just want to be sure to lift you up. And I know we're kind of on the countdown to the holidays, and please enjoy yourselves. Always available. Stacy, Keith, they know how to get a hold of me, but your patience and a lot of talking at you today. But thanks so much, and everybody have a great holiday.
Thank you so much. Okay, so one of the last things we have today is for you to complete the meeting feedback form, and Stacy does look at these, and we do talk about the suggestions that for things that you would like to talk about at our meetings. And as you can see today, our meeting was jam-packed. And you had a lot of great questions, and we appreciate those questions. And we, these are the things that help elevate the teaching profession, is your feedback and willingness to talk. So any information that you can give us will help us as we plan the March meeting. So the link to the feedback form is in the chat, along with, if you did not complete the attendance form, make sure you complete that as well. Also, I forgot to say this at the beginning of the meeting. If for some reason your position changes and you are no longer a classroom teacher, will you please let Stacy know that? We want to make sure that we are elevating classroom teachers, and so we want classroom teachers as members of this council. And so if any time that changes and you move to a different position that's out of the classroom, please email her, or you can email me too, and let us know that. So I'm so thankful for each of you who are on this committee and your passion for making teaching and learning in Kentucky even more amazing than it already is. And so we value your opinion, and we value you as people and as professionals. So in order to end our meeting today, I need someone to make a motion to adjourn, and then I will also need a second.
Susan Ventura, motions to adjourn.
Chad Davidson, second.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. Our next meeting is March the 7th, and we look forward to seeing you at that point. And if any time you have any suggestions or comments, please reach out to myself or Stacy. Everybody have a great holiday season, and we'll see you in March.
Yeah.